Okay, so today is the 2nd of June, 2022, and it is also the birthday of Carlo Scarpa. He was born in 1906 on this very day, the 2nd of June. So let's read a little bit. He died at 72, a little bit older than 72, 72 and a few months under curious circumstances. So Carlo Scarpa was an Italian architect influenced by the materials, landscape, and the history of Venetian culture, and by Japan. It seems he died in Japan, actually. Scarpa translated his interest in history, regionalism, invention, the techniques of the artist and craftsman into ingenious glass and furniture design. Well, this is what I read on Wikipedia. Scarpa was born in Venice. What a chance. Much of his early childhood was spent in Vicenza, though, where his family relocated when he was 2 years old. After his mother's death, when he was 13, he moved with his father and brother back to Venice. Carlo attended the Academy of Fine Arts, where he focused on architectural studies. Graduated from the Accademia in Venice with the title of Professor of Architecture. I didn't know that, one graduates from a university with such a title, Professor of Architecture. Maybe in Italy, this means something different from other places. He apprenticed with the architect Francesco Rinaldo. Scarpa, opportunistic as most architects are, married Rinaldo's niece, Nini Lazzari, Honorina Lazzari. Nice. That's how one makes it into the world and through the world, by marrying, the niece of your employer. However, and this is important, Scarpa refused to sit the pro forma professional exam administered by the Italian government after World War II. As a consequence, he was not permitted to practice architecture without associating himself with an architect. With an architect, as if he was anything else. Hence, those who worked with him, his clients, associates, craftspersons, called him professor rather than architect. I mean, life is strange, isn't it? His architecture is deeply sensitive to the changes of time, from seasons to history, rooted in a sensuous material imagination. He was Mario Botta's thesis advisor along with Giuseppe Mazzariol. The latter was the director of the Fondazione Querini Stampalia when Scarpa completed his renovation and garden for that institution. Scarpa taught drawing and interior decoration. I told you why, at the Istituto Universitario di Architettura di Venezia, which is apparently the only university of architecture in Italy, from the late 1940s until his death. While most of his built work is located in the Veneto, he made designs of landscapes, gardens, and buildings for other regions of Italy, as well as Canada, the United States, Saudi Arabia, France, and Switzerland. His name has 11 letters, and this is used repeatedly in his architecture. Nice. Verum ipsum factum. These words, these 3 words in Latin, are incised on the gate, to the entrance to the University of Architecture. Now, of course, Italy has many other schools of architecture, but I was told only one University of Architecture, and that is in Venice, where he taught. He taught decoration, and what else did he teach? Drawing, because he didn't have that thing, whatever the Italian government asked him to have, and he didn't. The Institute of, well, I don't know, I don't think I translate correctly, but it's the University of Architecture in Venice, Entrance Venice, and we are going to see where these words, belong to this part of this design. He designed this entrance into the School of Architecture And he incised there, I mean, not with his own hand, I imagine, and although that would have been nice too, verum ipsum factum. From what I understood, this means truth through making, yes, truth through making. And I think this is a deep call to arms, so to speak, for architects. You discover truth in the act of making. He was very, very peculiar in his usage of paper. He didn't use any paper with any pencil. He had to match the right pencil for the right paper. So he loved paper. He loved to draw. He was an incredible sensualist in terms of drawing, and we are going to see many of his drawings. He used to place, he worked a lot with tracing paper, yellow tracing paper, placing one paper above another, above another, above another, above another, and so on. Many years ago, when I attended a conference by Kenneth Frampton on Carlo Scarpa, which he called The Adoration of the Joint, Carlo Scarpa and the Adoration of the Joint, then I went home and I wrote I don't know how to call it, an article, an essay, exactly about this. And I think I called it the detail which knows. And if any one of you is interested to read it, I can send it to you. I mentioned a lot there, Lao Tzu or Lao Tse, the great Chinese mystic, because I think there is a relationship between Carlo Scarpa, although he was fond of Japan, but there is something in his architecture that connects him also to, in general, to Oriental wisdom, and Lao Tzu or Lao Tse is, I think, could be very relevant to understanding Carlo Scarpa. The details, indeed, the so-called details in his architecture are formidable. They are creations in themselves, audacious, and it only shows that actually in architecture there are no details. I mean, I call them details, but they are they don't adequately connect with this word or are described to this word. I mean, this is almost like a small, sculptural abstract work, almost, significant in itself. It performs a function, but you see, this man designed everything. I mean, but in a very unpredictable way. Everything, even the placing of the, I always have a trouble to, maybe because I dislike shurubur, and I remember the word nail, but not the word the screws, I guess. Yes, where the screws. I mean, look how he positioned everything perfectly, and to generate an ornamental effect. Are we doing the same thing in our work? Well, it's very difficult because we build, large complexes of buildings. No one has time, so to speak, to do something like this. But a good architect who cares about everything, the smallest part of the building, thinks and does things, I guess, I hope, similar to Carlo Scarpa. This is the view of the entrance into the campus of the University of Architecture. And what can I say? He created an event, an architectural event, of a function which most people would have treated differently. This is another example of creativity in architecture. He could have mimicked, a banal entrance, or maybe less banal, but less, well, even idiosyncratic. This is probably if you spend some time in front of this interest and study everything and look at things and even, you know, go through and back and through and back, you might even write a short philosophical poem. This is profound architecture, but it's also joyous and playful. I don't know how to convey more than the work itself, that to look at the beauty of architecture when it is assumed as a little adventure. It doesn't have to be a large adventure in terms of dimensions. You know, you can create architecture in a, when I wrote that text on him, I said, you know, a square inch for Carlo Scarpa is enough to create architecture. There is a saying in China that in a second there are thousands of years. And similarly, talking about space, we could say that in a square inch for Carlo Scarpa, I exaggerate a little bit, but symbolically, I think I might not be totally wrong. In a square inch, in a work by Carlo Scarpa, there are thousands of square miles or square kilometers or whatever. I think we need more architects like him in the world. You know, instead of having absurd dreams to going to Mars, maybe we should consider the beauty of the Earth and the value of every square inch that we have. Unfortunately, it's easier to think about traveling for 6 or 8 months in the darkness of cosmos to go to a place you could never return from, in order to concentrate on the beauty of the Earth and take care of every square inch. Here he is, smoking, of course, like a man possessed. Well, you know, I think creators in any field are complicated beings. You know, they burn within, and then, you know, some of them smoke, some of them drink, some of them become virtuous, like monks. You know, as Charles Baudelaire said, you know, get drunk with virtue poetry or wine. It's up to you. You know, he was even eccentric in, like, you see on his I don't know how it is called, this finger on his left hand. He had a rather feminine and flamboyant, I cannot call it diamond because I don't know if it was, let's call it a jewel, but very unusual for a man, you know, in the 70s or so, 60s, 70s, 80s. No, because he died in 1978. In Europe now, I mean, in the 20th century, who would wear this kind of ring? I mean, I'm sure some centuries ago they were common, but not in the 20th century. I don't know of any other modern architect sporting such a ring. But Scarpa was unusual in many ways. I like this picture of him, really. He looks a little bit like a famous soccer player today playing for Internazionale Milano or one of those teams. I don't know if you would have been pleased, but you see, hearing this, but he is here with the craftsman. So what do we see here? He is actually helping the craftsman. And we see here the craftsman on the right and the artist on the left. The artist being, of course, Carlo Scarpa, the artist. And again, I remember what Walter Gropius said. They are both rooted in craft, both the craftsman and the artist. The only difference is that the artist, in this case, Carlo Scarpa, is exalted. Yes, exalted. And I keep asking myself and others and students, are we exalted? Do we work with exaltation? Well, it seems certain professors are against exaltation and against enthusiasm. They think the student needs less enthusiasm, not more, certainly not exaltation, for God's sake. And indeed, how could you respond to those restrictive rules and regulations being exalted? You couldn't. I like Carlo Scarpa, I really do. I'm sure he was complex, difficult, fluid, exotic. I mean, again, look at his ring and look at his glasses. There is a picture, I hope I have it here. The fact that architects have a hard time to find a decent pair of eyeglasses, I know. But he himself couldn't make up his mind about the eyeglasses, and he was using at one point some very strange eyeglasses. I hope I have a picture of him to illustrate this. I like this Italian. I really do. I don't know. I mean, should I continue? Because I become emotional now. We need people like him in the world. We need people interesting, complicated, absurd sometimes, ridiculous other times, but who create beautiful things. The professor, he couldn't be called architect. Can you imagine? You know, he was the quintessential architect, you know, in the second half of the 20th century, and he couldn't be called architect because the government, its majesty, the government. Here he is. Now look at these eyeglasses. You know. I mean, really, if she was some kind of a prima donna in Hollywood, you would have said, I don't know. But I mean, what architect would use such eyeglasses, really? You tell me. He was a serious man, a philosophical man, a mystic in a way. But look what eyeglasses he was, the frames, they're incredible. I would never wear something like this, even if I got paid for doing it. No, never. And I can be ridiculous myself, but in my own terms, not with this kind of eyeglasses, no. Well, we could also comment a little bit on the hat, but the hat is not so outrageous as the eyeglasses. Here he's dressed, you know, like a Japanese, you know, he's an actor, you know, having a good time somewhere in Japan. He died even in Japan. Falling from a building, I read, or falling from a stair mysteriously, either descending from the plane or in a building. It's very unclear. I did some research. I didn't obtain a PhD in how Carlo Scarpa died, but I did investigate a little bit, and there are various, you know, stories related to this. Drawings. Now we arrive at what he was excellent at, truly excellent. I mean, well, this picture is not truly doing justice to his genius in drawing. Maybe this one, but it's a little bit too pale also. I don't know. I mean, again, if you would show such a drawing in a school of architecture, in certain schools of architecture, you would be dismissed. Or like this, you know, because it's not technical enough, precise enough, although it's actually very precise. I mean, you know, you could say anything about Carlo Scarpa, but that he was not very, very, very minute. He was. But the drawing is poetical. It's a quest in colors with pencils, sharpened appropriately. And as I said before, he wouldn't work with any paper for any pencil, or vice versa, with any pencil or any paper. No, he had to have the right pencil for the right paper. Otherwise he couldn't draw. I love the fanaticism of this idiosyncrasy. Look at here, what's going on here? These are studies for a house, was this man mad? I mean, what's going on here? Too many, you know, little fragments scattered everywhere. this man was certainly something. He was decentered. You know, he had problems. I love Scarpa. And look here. I mean, I can talk all evening and maybe even overnight just about contemplating these two columns and what's going on here, meeting the horizontal part of the structure. I think it's beautiful. This is a love poem. This is a love poem in architectural terms. Right here, we have two beings, no, two columns. They are together, but they are also individualized. You know, you can acknowledge them in their individuality, and then there are, you know, there are connections in the crucial parts of the building, the slab at the bottom, the beams at the top. You see there are transitional elements. The column doesn't reach for the beam just you know, just to arrive at it. There is always a third element, this transitional element. The same here, there is always a third, and this third is negotiating between the two entities. Here again, this is art, this is poetry. You know, this is totally lost today, totally lost. I mean, I don't know of another architect who has indeed this understanding and longing for the, you know, the truth and the beauty of joining, as Scarpa did. Of course, in ancient cultures, you know, good craftsmen and architects were not at all indifferent to the art of joining. That's why in Japan, for example, you know, true craftsmen didn't even use nails. Forget about screws. They just joined elements without, you know, wrapping them with what he tried to do here. Because, you know, Bjarke Ingels, for example, of course, he would not have used two columns, because in this case, you could very well just put one column, maybe thicker, maybe not, and, you know, to support the same thing. But Scarpa was interested in two-ness, TWONESS, and he understood that an entity is itself, but it's also the container of a double, of a duality, and these dualities are of an erotic nature. You know, I mean, eros here is not presented literally, but is presented up in an abstract manner and symbolically, metaphorically. We see even here the same thing. We see a negotiating third that connects this part with this part. And we can see it all the time in his work. This man was digging deep into the mysteries of life, into the mysteries of creation. And that's why, you know, his work is very, very important and very, very relevant to everything, not just to architecture, to everything, to culture, to art, to humanism, to everything, really. He was a maker, of course, verum ipsum factum. He was concerned with doing, with creating architecture that is buildable and built. But beyond this, he was a poet, and extravagant, eccentric, yes, without the title of an architect, but who cared? He left he left behind a legacy which is his. You cannot confound, you know, his drawings with anybody else's, nor his buildings. Again, look here, the smallest thing, you know, it's you work for the gods, actually, you know, like the ancient builders of the Hindu temples, and probably not only Hindu, who devoted themselves the most to unseen parts of the building. I mean, unseen by the human eye, unseen by the tourist, and so on, but seen by God or by the gods. They work for the gods. They didn't work for the flash cameras. They didn't work for the magazines. They didn't work for, mainstream publicity. They work for God or for the gods. And in those temples that I mentioned, apparently the most beautiful, the most accomplished parts of the temple are actually a vertical dialogue, a dialogue between the architects and the craftsmen, anonymous as they were, with the above or the below, but not with the humans. Maybe we should relearn that longing that other civilizations or other cultures or other times had with the unseen, with the beyond or the below, with the above or the below. We desacralized everything, Yes, we still build churches in nonsensical way, especially in Romania, and we still claim we are believers, but we are not. We don't have faith, and this is shown in our works mainly. We saw this one, we didn't see this one, but we see in most of the drawings scattered fragments. It's as if this man was afraid of a center, and that's why when I wrote about him, I refer to Lao Tzu, because for Lao Tzu, water was immensely important. And the fluidities of Carlo Scarpa's architecture are very different from the total fluidity or the fluid totality of Zaha Hadid. No, it's almost the opposite. He could work with the straight lines and still achieve fluidity, a different kind of fluidity, not an explicit fluidity, an implicit fluidity. But what Lao Tzu said about water is magnificent, because actually his Tao, the Tao of life, his very little book, very small book with 80 sayings, he is saying that water, which appears to be weak, is actually very strong. In fact, it's stronger than the strongest rock, because in time, water can erode the biggest and the strongest rock. And he is entirely true. So, water appears to have no center, it's continuously moving, it's apparently avoiding the big stones, but in time eroding them. In the same way, the drawings by Carlo Scarpa seem not to have a center, but the center is unseen, not seen, was within him. He was gravitating around that center, which does not appear explicitly in his work. Very interesting architect. I wish I had one of these drawings. I would have gladly put it on the wall and looked at it. But we can have prints these days. Of course, we can print anything. Again, I look at this drawing and I see the beauty of practicing architecture. A beauty often we lost sight of. In our quest for, respecting the rules and regulations or pleasing I don't know whom, we forgot to be ourselves, to be true to ourselves, and to create poetry through architecture. And this is what architecture is supposed to do. And we don't do it. Look at this nervous line here. I think he was also a temperamental man. Well, he was Italian after all. But here I see some angst in the way he, as Jean Nouvel would say, l'intuition crayonnante, the intuition which, I forgot the word in English, but you understand, l'intuition crayonnante. There is nervousness, almost impatience. Maybe I idealize him. Maybe he was not so, extraterrestrial as I try to depict him now. It's possible. Maybe I talk about an imaginary Carlo Scarpa who is in my head or in my heart or in both. It's possible. But, this is always the case, actually, with heroes. The true heroes, I mean, in real life, they might be different from what we imagine they are. but they inspire that imaginary hero that is in one's head or heart or both. And for this is enough to idealize them, I guess. Anyway, let's not become too poetical here. Let's come down to earth. But I like, his drawings they even seem to be awkward or unskillful even sometimes. This kind of sketch, which is done, of course, for for his own studying a certain problem and not to impress a client or a professor like him, show a man with hesitations, with questioning. There are more questions actually than answers in his drawings, and that's exactly what I like. I was talking in my article about him about this, that there are little ziggurats in his architecture which play hide and seek with each other. It's again about the eros of life. It's about the dualities that try to become one, and they do come one. They do become one temporarily, and then they distance themselves from each other. It's the tango of life. It's the tango of eros. It's the tango of the cosmic attraction and rejection. And this is what creation is to be. Residences. Let's start with his residences. Casa Veriti, Udine, 1955-1961, by this professor who couldn't be called an architect because he refused to pass a certain examination. It makes me smile because this is about that disobedient architecture that I am, trying to promote. Yet, the architect as a disobedient being, intellectual, artist, you name it. Yes, disobedient. Okay, I don't feel like doing something. I don't want to make a certain compromise. I love architecture. I give my life for architecture, but I refuse to take a certain exam which would humiliate me. So please forgive me. I will just look at my ring. My ring tells something about who I am. And my ring told me last evening I shouldn't take the examination. And he didn't. Casa Veriti. Here it is. I think it's excellent. It's Kenneth Frampton said that Carlo Scarpa made an immense effort to remain within tradition. A puzzling statement, most of the time, or usually the opposite happens. People make immense efforts to escape tradition, but he made apparently immense efforts to remain within tradition. What would that mean? Well, I don't know. I'm inclined to imagine he wanted to say that maybe instinctually, so to speak, he was a rebel, but he wanted his rebelliousness to still remain somehow confined, a little bit at least, or be tangent to what we call tradition. And if we look at this building, it's a moderately a modernistic building, but not totally. There are here hesitations. I don't know if I should call them hesitations. Maybe not appropriately. It's a house. It's a house which, yes, could belong to the second half of the 20th century, but somehow escapes an easy, pinning down to a specific period. I like this very much, the ambiguity of it, and it's really complex, and it escapes being connected to a style. It's new and old somehow at the same time, and you don't quite know what we are looking at. Is it a house? Is it a larger building, maybe even an industrial building? If you don't realize its scale from this position, you realize it's not too big because you see the trees. You know, I mean, they are taller than the building. And look here. We look at this part of the house, and you don't know. You know, really, this could have been a larger building with some industrial parts, you know, or chimneys or whatever. It's very interesting, really, to be able to do something like this with a one-family house. And then, of course, we have now we know he was teaching decoration, if you can believe it, you know, and decorative design or decoration and drawing. But this modern architect, he didn't have any problem to have ornamental elements in his architecture, clearly for all to see. While here is something else. He can employ glass, like, you know, we so much love to do, but even the framing of the glass is rather unusual. He didn't go for the dogmatic horizontal, you know, glass of modernity. He uses rather vertical mountains. I mean, there are mountains in general are vertical. I find it very, very interesting. Maybe even a slight influence coming from Frank Lloyd Wright. You know, we have to understand something. Carlo Scarpa was a very cultured man and architect. I mean, at this level, we cannot talk about ignorant architects. You know, he was not a commercial cheap shot. No, no, he had to have, you know, to create an architecture that is meaningful and deep and, you know, almost timeless. You cannot play games with culture. You have to be immersed in culture, and not just the culture of your place and your time, but of all times and all places, you know, to be able to, I mean, look what's going on here. You know, he assimilated, he digested influences and then transformed them creatively in an interesting and engaging way. This is again a very deep lesson in architecture coming from this man. There is also some kind of a weaving here in the making of the world. The interior is, of course, a comfortable, you know, almost luxurious interior, but it's not commercial. I love this picture as well. You know, this kind of window, large window, but divided, fragmented. And here we have, you know, again, I see the influence of Frank Lloyd Wright, but transformed. Yes, there is craft. There is clearly, this is an architect or a professor who knew also about crafting a house. At the same time, not losing exaltation, because the exaltation transformed the building into architecture. A very unusual architect. Villa Zopas, Corneliano in Treviso, 1957. Now I don't know what this is. It's a drawing, but I don't know if it's by him. It looks by him, but I don't know why I have these images pixelated as they are. Maybe this is some kind of a, you know, processed image of the plan of this house. I wish I think I have later some images, I hope, or maybe it was not built. Let's read again about Villa Zopas in Treviso, 1957. I don't know why I don't have pictures, but he did use this kind of, you know, the presence of you know, cylinders or half cylinders or, you know, almost complete, but not quite cylinders in other instances. We'll see also Casa Veriti, another Veriti. This is the plan. This is the plan of the house. I don't know. I mean, it has to be experienced. You know, this is not quite a circle here, is it? It's not. It's a deformed circle. It's not an ellipse either. It's like here, you know, it's a little bit off. But exactly this aspect that it is a little bit off makes it, I think, very valuable. And then look at these, you know, what are these, you know, scattered, you know, columns, you know, they are the trademark of the building, but you see they are not placed on a grid, you know, they are placed rather capriciously. And talking about this, capriciousness cannot be eliminated from architecture, and in fact it shouldn't, because capriciousness is an expression of subjectivity. And those who think that subjectivity shouldn't enter the noble realm of architecture are wrong. All important architectures are significantly subjective as well. With this, Kenneth Frampton agreed as well. He said that you know, his choice of examples in his critical history of modern architecture are also, you know, a subjective choice. Of course, in architecture, you cannot be totally objective. It's impossible, and it's actually desirable not to be totally objective. Those who claim total objectivity do not refer to what I understand by architecture. They refer to something else. Anyway, sorry about these small pictures. I guess I have to improve this presentation, but you still see, you know, you can see how much a good architect can do, you know, with you could say a simple house. There is no such a thing as simple house. You know, the Le Cabanon by Le Corbusier is not simple at all. I mean, it is on one hand, but it's not simplistic. That's why, to be honest with you, I don't understand why a diploma in the 6th year, after 6 years of studies, cannot be with a so-called little house. Why does it have to be a big building? You know, I mean, the craft, the sensitivity, the talent, the hard work, the complexity of the mind and the heart, the imagination of an architect can be shown very well in a very small building, in as much as it could be shown not at all in a very large building. I don't understand why we associate bigness with you know, complexity or you know, no, it has nothing to do with it. You know, there are much bigger buildings in the world than this house that we look at here in the model, but they don't have the complexity of this small house, approximately small, designed by Carlo Scarpa. I love the windows. I mean, look at these windows. You know, this is what an architect who refuses dogma, who refuses the dogma that Monsieur Le Corbusier or some others try to impose on us. And he, yeah, I can see here that he didn't want to give up on tradition. There was something in him that remained connected, and he wanted very much to remain connected with what we call tradition, but at the same time he was almost iconoclastic. It's both, and this makes his architecture maybe a little bit difficult, but beautifully so. It's a very fine house, really. And it makes me smile when I think that he had to use someone else to sign the drawings, to get a permit for the house, because he didn't have the right? I mean, truly, his architecture is about the reclaiming the fragment. Reclaiming the fragment, you know, placing the fragment at the center in a way. Casa Bolboni, Venezia, 1964, 1974. Here is a little bit, he actually built, it's an existing housing complex, and he just built something in front of you, see in the back, the existing building. He just built this thing, which it's almost hard to see because it's covered by, by plants. I keep saying to the students, if the facade of your building doesn't turn out well, no problem. Just let the ivy to climb on the facade, and it will take care of your facade very, very well. I never saw a building covered with ivy or some other plants that looks bad. No. So in my opinion, it's not even necessary any longer to study a facade. You just allow the ivy to climb on the building, or if you are more cynically inclined or more commercially inclined, you invite Sony or Hitachi or Calvin Klein to adorn the building with some banners, because this might happen anyway. So I'm a little bit cynical myself now, but here you can see the little addition that he created here, easier because the plants didn't yet become wild. Even here, this is architecture, and maybe with a capital A, if we are to be emphatic. But in his case, it's not necessary to be emphatic. Look at the steps, 2 steps, that's it, 2 steps, but this is an architectural event. 2 steps, that's it. I mean, really, if we look at Carlo Scarpa and then we look at Peter Zumthor, we see the difference between a really good architect and one who anyway, I don't know if he designed also the interior here, although this was his métier because he was teaching interior design. I guess he did, yeah. He did, he designed it. And there are idiosyncratic elements, because it seems that the interior, I mean, there are levels of modernity that seem to be in conflict with what Franto said, that he made great efforts to escape, the temptation to run away from tradition. Here, there is a lot of sleekness, which I find intriguing, not to say something else, I don't know. I don't know very well what to think about this interior, which is so sleek and glittering. And rather mundane, isn't it? No, I wouldn't describe Carlo Scarpa as being a non-sinner. No, I think he harbored sinful thoughts, like many artists actually. Sinful from the perspective of the righteous one, the petit bourgeois. But no, there are sensualities here. I mean, look even at this stair, is or maybe I'm in a bad mood, so to speak. I don't know. It seems to me it's rather erotical, this thing. But it's true. I am going through some crisis now. Or look here. Now, if this is not erotical, I don't know what is. It's almost indecent, really. We know that Carlo Scarpa was a sensuous architect, but here the expression of his sensuality is almost alarming, abstract as it is, or abstracted. Interesting man, interesting architect. I'm not so sure that this kitchen, though, is so interesting, but it's a kitchen on the other hand, and on the other hand, for God's sake. I know that our world is obsessed by kitchens, and Arch daily proves this simple truth and painful truth for me every day, glorifying, I don't know how many models of, incredible kitchens and so on. Now look here. You know, I have to smile, I have to laugh, and I have to vibrate. I have to respond to this. You know, it's magical. This is magical. Why would he do it like this? You know, I mean, each piece is crafted. Handcrafted. These are handmade pieces, one of a kind, to show what? I mean, we see here two pairs of couples, two couples in a way. You know, it's one couple and another couple. Then there is another couple here. Again, here we have. Sorry, I almost feel like talking beyond certain limits, but. I don't know why I find his architecture and his so-called details so sensuous and erotical. You know, this is. I better shut up. I better shut up. But the house on the Grand Canal is this one where you saw the building already. Annesso a Casa de Benedetti, Bonaiuto, Roma, 1965, 1972. This one is in Rome, and it's hidden. I learned about it late. I didn't know he built in Rome, but well, the sculptures are not by him, but again and again, what do we see? Two lovers. But you know, here we have two lovers, and here we have 6 lovers. That's why I almost said this is, I better stop. But we have one pair of lovers, another pair of lovers. Actually, there are more than 6 because you can look at them differently. Here is a pair, another couple is here, another couple is here, but you could also see that this is a couple, this is a couple. My God, I better stop. But you know, yeah, it's love. But he didn't do the sculpture, of course. The statues, they are not his. But it doesn't matter. It goes with Carlo Scarpa. Although the building doesn't show explicitly what the statue does, or the sculptures. But here also have even, transfigured as it is, because this, part of the stair, which is so ingeniously done, actually, I mean, I feel like analyzing it. Really, I should stop because soon I might need Dr. Freud to be near me. But look here. Here is one thread. Here is another thread, and the other thread in between comes from the opposite side. So if this is not Eros, I don't know what it is. And it goes again. It's even this vertical part of because the thread becomes column, it's divided into 2. So we have continuously a 2-ness. But what is here? Here is a 2-ness as well, explicitly so. But abstractly, in his architecture, he does this all the time. 2 elements playing tango or dancing tango, hide and seek or whatever. There is always a 2-ness at play. And this is what makes his architecture so, on one hand, a little bit unsettling, enticing. This is great art, really. He might have had a strange, taste for eyeglasses, but I think looking at this picture, you imagine how this stair was done. And you see it only, it's not explicit. It's not, you don't get it immediately. That in the playfulness of these parts, which interlock themselves into this abstracted geometrical erotical dance, you discover the source of life here only after a while, not immediately, because it is abstracted, and this is what art is supposed to do. James Joyce, in the Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man, Stephen has a discussion with a colleague, and they arrive at the conclusion that, now I think Stephen Dedalus advocated the idea that good art should never be explicitly erotical. And I would agree with Stephen Dedalus. Here also, it's not explicit, it's implicit, and it is abstracted. But the essence of life, which is eros, is present. You just have to be in the mood, so to speak. Maybe, you know, on the background of all kinds of you know, frustrations or whatever. Anyway, strange building though, this one in Rome. But one thing is for sure, you can talk more about a building by Carlo Scarpa, just one building, one single house, then you can talk about, you know, large so-called urban development. Casa Bellotto, 1944, 1956. We are going a little bit backwards here in time. And look at the pavement on the floor. Look at the ornamental design, if we are to call it a design on the floor. What modern architect would do something like this? I mean, I actually find it very, very nice, but in an unsettling way. It's so, you know, it's decorative. It's a little, no, it's not neurotical, but it is decorative, and it is the ornamental part of it is so explicitly ornamental that you would say this cannot be a modern house, but it is a modern house. It is a modern house, very much so. And we'll see other things, you know. It's not a rug. It's part of the, I hope it's not a rug, and I'm just, you know, singing here the beauty of a rug instead of the beauty of architecture. It's an aristocratic house, an aristocratic apartment. It's you know, built for someone well-to-do. It shows that this man was teaching interior design indeed. Look at this. This is also a little bit off, or maybe it's just the picture. It's possible that it's just the picture, but I'm not sure. This is an interesting aspect of the architecture of Carlo Scarpa. Saul Steinberg said something very interesting, that the genius has something awkward, not awkward, this is not the word, clumsy. There is a clumsiness. This is very interesting, because usually we think that the work that is splendid, that is, you know, genial, you know, is perfect, it doesn't have anything idiosyncratic, and is not true. It's not true. It's not easy. It's not an easy work. It's not easily decipherable. And here, I think in his architecture is the same thing. Some things seem to be a little bit off, almost dissonant. Sometimes you could even think that maybe something even a slight cacophony, aesthetical cacophony, maybe. But it all makes sense in time if you digest the work and you begin to understand it. And if there are impurities, those impurities actually belong to life itself. And the good work reflects a deeply felt and lived life. Did he do this panel again? Welcome to ornament. I don't know. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. He obviously, I mean, after all, he was earning a living teaching decorative, you know, decoration or whatever it was. Casa Carlo Scarpa, but I couldn't find pictures of it, although I'm very curious. I took this list with his works from the Italian Wikipedia, but I couldn't find images, or I was not patient enough, searching enough. Casa Carlo Scarpa. If any of you who are here will discover it, please be kind. If you want, contact me. I'm curious to see it. Casa Curto Quero, Belluno. This one also is almost infuriating, this house, actually, because you might even be inclined at one point to say it's a joke. You know, it's really, if you look at the building on the right and you look at this building, I mean, if you didn't know Carlo Scarpa made it, I'm sure you would pass by it without even stopping. You know, maybe the extravagance of the oblongs a little bit, but otherwise, no. You might even think this is a house built by what in Romania some, in my opinion, not very kind people call, you know, the work of a Dorel. You know, I really don't like that, you know, habit that some architects have to call a work which is done, you know, clumsily, you know, that there was a Dorel who did it. I don't think is a nice thing to say, but anyway. Now let's contemplate this house a little bit. What do we see here? You know, we see, like in the case of any house, an entrance, we see windows. Here we see also some oblongs, which in traditional architecture were a common feature, and I think they should come back because they are very useful oblongs from various points of view. What do we see here? You know, what's going on here? This is a water collector that collects water and then goes inside the wall. How could this be? Is it not supposed to actually bring the water outside of the wall? It's unusual. And look at this corner here. You know, I understand the reason of this, but this is not done very often. And what else is curious here? You know, even the way the windows, the opening are placed, the house seems to be like a banal house with some funny things or whimsical things a little bit, but whimsicality is not, like, look at this oblong. It's only half the height of the window, the bottom half. How could this be? Maybe on the other side is the other, like in this case. I imagine this is the case. But even this is unusual, right? To have oblongs done in this way. Again, it's about two-ness, about pairs, about a couple. You know, he could have done the oblongs like here. But even here, one oblong is divided into two. And then one triangle itself is divided into two. But this kind of oblongs I never saw before. You know, where half of the oblong takes care of the bottom of the half bottom of the window, and the other one of the top half. It's unusual. It's unusual, and but this is what a creative architect does. Sometimes does, hopefully more often than not, unusual things. And that's why we talk about him and not about an architect who does things like everybody else does them. Look at this. I find it almost amazing. And these oblongs, you know, I find them very interesting. And yes, whimsical, playful, and a little bit maybe viciously so. There is a little bit of aesthetical perversion here, but because of it, the building escapes banality. And at the same time, it is banal, because we cannot say that it's a, you know, it's a revolutionary building and so on. No, it's not. He never intended to create a revolutionary building. It's a little bit kinky, this facade, isn't it? Like that big ring that he wears on his right hand. On the other hand, look what's going on in the back. Totally unexpected. Let's hope. Look at this. Totally unexpected. I mean, who would think that in the back of this building we would discover this? it's you know, Carlo Scarpa was quite something. I think he enjoyed himself. I really think he enjoyed even the difficulties of being, you know, an architect who didn't have the right to signature, and he had to associate himself with a less skillful architect in order to build anything. This is a less known building. I told you I have a long presentation about Carlo Scarpa, and I'm a little bit proud of the fact that I show lesser known works by him. And I think in the case of an important architect, it is important to know everything they did, because it is my opinion that the worst work of a good architect is better than the best work of a worthless architect. So even the mistakes of a great architect are better. At least they are interesting. At least the mistake is, you know, provocative and so on, if it is a mistake. Now, why would he do this? You know, this, because this is again, you know, ornamental, and you say it's superfluous. Yes, it is superfluous, perhaps. I don't see what function it could have, but let's recall Voltaire, who was praising the superfluous. I think would be nice if the students would have a, you know, program for a project, maybe, okay, a short project, not a long one, not for 2 months, but for 2 weeks or 4 weeks, for a superfluous building or a superfluous house. How would you do it after you were tortured with Neufert and rules and regulations for a long time? How would you do a superfluous building? But let's be honest, we all enjoy what is interdicted. We all enjoy, in fact, those are the most enjoyable elements of life. What is useless, what is even interdicted. Why are they so pleasant? Why is it so pleasant to do what is interdicted? Why? I'm asking a question. I am expecting an answer after the presentation. Casa Studio Gallo. Now look here. What did he do here? Why? This is, you know, he transformed a piece of glass into an artwork. Are we thinking about doing something like this? Very rarely, if at all. No. Do all the pieces of furniture sit well in this space? I think so. I don't know what that person is doing there. Is she a she? Probably, you know. I hope that space is not at the, you know, up there at the incredible height. Now these armchairs are not his, of course. But look at the frames of the doors. This would scare away, you know, the minimalist or Bjarke Ingels or many of our stars today, because they are so heavy and brown. What architect today would make such frames? No, not to my knowledge. No, this is antique. This is obsolete. This is a dinosaur. No. Casa Studio Scaturi. Now look at this there. Now I would ask the functionalist, how do you bring the piano upstairs? You can't. You can't. But then, do you really have to bring the piano upstairs? Of course, the angle of this stair is illegal. Zvi Hecker was right. Great art, or yeah, real art and real architecture cannot be totally legal. This is not a legal stair, is it? I mean, any student of architecture and any architect would agree with me. This is not a legal stair. If you do something like this in school, you will go home with a terrible grade. Terrible. But Carlo Scarpa, a force in 20th century architecture, he did it. And I actually think he did it with joy. And to be honest with you, I would like to be a toddler who climbs this stair. I would love to use this stair more than a so-called legal and perfect and functional stair. I think it's a delicious stair. It is. Yes, you might not go upstairs to the piano or downstairs for that matter, but forget it, You could, you could go with an electronic Yamaha of a moderate size if you indeed you need a piano of some sort upstairs. I love this stair. I love it. Doesn't matter how you look at it. And yes, it's narrow and the zigzagging intrigues me and attracts me. That's why I keep saying good art and good architecture should be disobedient. And he was disobedient. And he created a special thing in a context where most architects would have done nothing special, nothing. Well, he did something special, something very pleasing for the eye as well. Bravo, Scarpa. I don't know about this. I mean, I cannot keep the floor clean in a much small room. There, it's probably a floor to look at, not to step on. It's very possible. Casa Zentner in Zurich. He built in Zurich too, 1963. It's more Swiss in a way, but not totally. There are interesting things here as well. Again, the insertion of the old in a way, this is again a certain reference to Frank Lloyd Wright. There is something of the old here. A little. Sorry, I know Frank Lloyd Wright would totally protest to call his, presence as belonging to the old. But you know what I mean. This is the fragment. I mean, this canopy here, this cornice, is a little bit off. It's not part of the same aesthetics like here. And yes, it belongs to an assimilated culture from another time, still modernistic, but another time and maybe even another continent. This one I find a little bit more predictable than some other buildings by him, but still there are things to be discovered. Like this unusual, look at this stair. It is unusual, and I wouldn't really call it beautiful. It's rather strange, Anyway, I couldn't find a better word. I used the word strange. In Zurich, Carlo Scarpa, Villa Bartolotto. Here you worked with Angelo Massieri, 1950, 1952. It's not very clear to me what they did here. I really work, I mean, it's not that I want applauses or compassion, but I really work hard for this compilation of images because I have about 400, and it was hard to find sometimes images with these buildings scattered, who knows where. Casa Giacomuzzi, he built, this man who didn't have the right to build, he did build. Again, look at this stair, a creation. And this is for the beautiful site created by an architect in Suceava. I really recommend you this website, is excellent, offhouses.com. It truly is. Maybe, I mean, the precise good taste with which every picture is chosen justifies this logo here, although he didn't take the pictures. They were taken probably from magazines, or I don't know how he obtained the pictures, but the choice belongs to him. And it's even perfectly placed on the page. It's an excellent website of houses. You can see it's supposed to be about unknown houses or forgotten houses, but all the best architecture in this field of houses is present there in that beautiful website. Another casa in collaboration with several people. This time, this is an interesting work from 1974, 1979. It means it was finalized after he died, because he died in 1978. Casa Ottolenghi. I don't know if I pronounce well or if the accent I place correctly, probably not. I apologize, I don't know yet Italian, but I'm attracted to the Italian language very much lately. And look at this. Didn't I say that if you allow the ivy to climb on your building, the ivy will make even the ugliest building a beautiful building? It's true. It is true. Take the ugliest building in the world and just allow the ivy to climb on it, and you get a good building, maybe a beautiful building. Now, this building probably would have been nice even without the participation of the green, but the green adds to it, and beautifully so. Very nice. It's true, he uses, look at this piece here. Did you ever see something like this before? The way it is zigzagging. A more common architect would have placed this thing in the center and have it straight, if indeed he would have done it. But he did it in this way. And this is very symptomatic of Carlo Scarpa, that somehow he assumes the difficulty, because he try to imagine drawing the plan, and you want to have this piece for the evacuation of the water, and it almost goes into this column, or what appears to be a column, and instead of him moving it away from it, he leaves it there and then zigzags around it, so it avoids it. I find this beautiful. I find this a lesson in architecture. Really, I know the conventional architect would protest, but I have my thoughts. Allow me, please, to have my own thoughts about Carlo Scarpa. Again, he creates something very special in a place where most architects didn't even think of doing anything here. It's really amazing. It's amazing. I mean, I'm really sorry, but there is more architecture here than in a huge Hilton hotel, or it doesn't have to be Hilton, built by the most brilliant star of today. There is more, because there is life, and it shows the tensions, even the torturous aspects of life, the conflict, the avoidance, the timidity, the attraction, the rejection. Again, I think it's about Eros. I really think so. Look at it. I feel like arresting the presentation right here and just contemplate together with you this picture for at least 20 minutes or half an hour. This is genius. I'm sorry, I don't very often use this word, but I think it is. It makes me smile. It makes me happy. It makes me less afraid of the ephemerality of life and the afterlife or whatever. It's like the Swedish knight playing chess with death on the beach in the beautiful film by Ingmar Bergman, The Seventh Seal. Can you imagine playing chess with death, and even entertaining the illusion that you can win? Of course, he doesn't win. But this is beautiful about the human beings, that we believe we can play chess with death and we can win. And of course, we cannot win. So welcome to the superfluous. No, it's about the superfluousness of the beauty that exists, still exists in human life and in human beings. I love this. I really love here. I could write a book just about this, what I look at here. The interior, I don't know. I mean, has moments of monumentality, which are a little bit, I don't even know what's happening in these huge, columns. Maybe he was hiding within what Louis Kahn was hiding in those towers at Richard's laboratories, some pipes. I don't know. Probably not. Why did he make them like this? I don't know. Maybe I don't know. Maybe to bring into this house, which is a private house, echoes of the imperial Rome, imperial Italy, the Roman times, to give the illusion that yes, we are in modernity, but echoes of that glorious past could show up in some form. I don't know. I don't know, but they are, their dimensions and even their aesthetics are a little bit, strange in this context. They don't seem to belong here. Again, we are talking about the awkwardness, the clumsiness even of some aspects of, and look at the ceiling. Not only it is black, but what's going on there? I mean, who would make a black ceiling? Very interesting architect. This gentleman, Carlo Scarpa. What is life? What is life? Do we know? What is life? What is architecture? Maybe his friend Louis Kahn was right. Architecture does not exist. What about this statement? Architecture does not exist. I loved Mark Wigley, whom in the past I didn't love. In fact, I wrote violently against him, but I love him for the fact that when he became dean at Columbia University in New York, he wrote an introduction to the school for the future applicants saying, we do not know what architecture is. Can you imagine the dean of the school at Columbia writing, and he signed it, we do not know what architecture is, but we are willing to explore the question, what is architecture, together with you. Nice. Very, very nice. So very different for those overconfident, leaders of schools who claim they know everything, or professors. No professor will tell you, I don't know what architecture is. All of them have the answers. The wrong answers. Anyway, again, Louis Kahn, the friend of Carlo Scarpa, said the question well asked is better than the best or the most beautiful answer. It's true. Now it's true, he was a Talmudist, but beyond that, he was true. He was true. And what's going on here? Really? I mean, why this rift, why this cut? Didn't I mention the two-ness, the two elements, the couple? Well, he understood that a monolith needs something against it, and then he cuts into it. It's a wounded monolith in a way, but it's not really wounded. The word maybe is not appropriate, but that cut makes the whole piece interesting and enticing, sculpturally, architecturally, visually, aesthetically. Not many architects would do something like this. He did it. As we know, this house was not finalized with him alive, but was almost finalized when he died. It was finished in 1979 and he died in 1978. It also has aspects of a ruin. a little bit, although it's not ruined. And I think this is very difficult to do a house which is not ruined, but which might generate somehow a feeling of being a ruin. That's very difficult to do. And if you achieve doing that, you are far in your development as an architect. He didn't do this, but it's beautiful. Casa Borgo, Vicenza. Vicenza, which is the city of Andrea Palladio. This is a building I saw several times with students when we travel to Vicenza. And it's a building, it's an apartment building. It's an apartment building not far away from the train station in Vicenza. And yes, it is in the city, owned still and will forever be Palladio's city, Vicenza. But as we read in his biography, he was born in Venice, Carlo Scarpa, but then lived for a number of years in Vicenza. This this building, which appears to be, at the first sight, not, here we have the architecture students, I guess. I'm not sure. I almost recognize myself with the students here, but I don't recognize. It's possible these are other students. Anyway, it doesn't matter who they are. This is an apartment building in Vicenza by Carlo Scarpa, and the only recognizable relationing to Andrea Palladio are these round, things at the top of the building. Otherwise, it's entirely a Carlo Scarpa building. But here I see a certain reference to those holes in Basilica Palladiana in Vicenza by, of course, Andrea Palladio. Look at the awkwardness, look at these small balconies, look at, not every window has them, vertical windows, not or horizontal windows, and then is the splendor, I call it splendor, of these reddish metallic structural elements which are masterfully having a dialectical relationship with the whole of the building. And you'll see also the corner of the building soon is, again, it's about the eros between two entities that play hide and seek, that there is a tension between them, and in between them there is attraction and rejection. This is the side elevation of the building. Again, through this gesture at the top, he connects with Palladio. It's just a rather discreet homage to Palladio, I would say. Otherwise, the building is totally Carlo Scarpa. This is beautiful, that, a block of flats, that's what it is. It is a block of flats, an apartment building. Most architects would do a more or less correct apartment building. But, there is more to it. It's, at the ground level, he dramatizes certain elements. All of a sudden we have the drama of dynamic architecture, concrete, exposed concrete, that here is also the entrance. Then there is here a door which goes into a small courtyard in front of the, the elevation of the building. I hope, look at this. Just look at this. Really, again, this is art. This is art. This is art. I mentioned before when I commented on that drawing, and maybe that drawing was actually made for this situation, for this building. Although this motif, he repeats it in some other places. I mean, most architects forget about, using, it's not just in terms of material. Here we have concrete and here we have metal, but also the colors. This is red, this is light gray. And then here, most architects would have just had, a beam, going all the way. And here probably they would have had just one column, but this is not good enough for Carlo Scarpa. He wanted to have two. And the two-ness repeats itself, even vertically. Before the column, the concrete column reaches the beam, there is a third element, a third entity that itself is divided into two and makes the transition from the concrete to the metal. And then you have the beam accommodating this third element by becoming less thick or less high. And this is splendid. It shows here it's a series of negotiations. He creates an architectural event out of nothing, you might say, out of nothing. This is the poetry of life and architecture right here. It's amazing. And then you have this beam and this beam, they are almost touching each other, but not quite. So it's always a two-ness, always a couple, two entities that are in close proximity. And that's why Frampton talked about the adoration of the joint. Adoration expresses a feeling of desire, not necessarily satisfied. It's a longing. I think this verb, which in Romanian also finds a very nice, an excellent word, indor, this longing, această tânjire, to long for the other. You could say this beam longs for the other beam. This column longs to me, the beam. It's a series of longings here. And it's thus process becomes part of being and becoming at the same time. And the dialectics of becoming are, intertwined with being. And I think it's beautiful. Look at them. I mean, it's the same thing that Brâncuș did in Poarta Sărutului, didn't he? It's the same thing. It's the very same thing. This is what the architect is supposed to do, to pay homage to the sources of life, to the essence of life, in a loving way, in a longing way, and find ways, abstracted ways, to express this. I mean, really, can we, after we watch this, can we be satisfied any longer with the banality of our columns? Doesn't matter if round or square, and the banality of the beams and the banality of the meeting between the two? No, I don't think so. I don't think so. I think some of these pictures are taken by me. I mean, I like to think so, although I usually lose track of the pictures. I took many pictures, but I lost most of the time. Just look here, I mean, it's beautiful. Of course, the pedantic architect would protest, would say, wait a minute, these walls are dirty. What does that person think? This is Andrei Tarkovsky at his best. This is an homage to the rain, to the elements, to the poetry of life. And what is here is Romeo and Juliet. That's what it is. This actually is better than the tower called Romeo and Juliet by his much admired Frank Lloyd Wright. This is beautiful. It's like two teenagers kissing behind the bushes. So their parents or some morose adults would not see that. That's what it is. Great. This is great. Maybe I myself in a curious mode now, but Casa Romanelli. this one also, I find it exceptional because it is modern, but not quite. You might even say it's the refurbishment or the renewal of an older house or something. And look at the frames, as opposed to the obsession that we have with frameless glass, as you know very well now in mainstream architecture. The smaller the frame, the better. That's what we think. In fact, if we don't have a frame at all, that would be the ideal. That's what we think. But that's not what Carlo Scarpa thought. Carlo Scarpa loved, very heavy frames. Look at them, they are heavy. They are almost pieces of furniture. They become imposing almost, but they give the character of the house. and I think they show a different sensibility than most modern architects have. This is the plan. Look at this in plan. It's incredible what he did here. I don't know what this is, but it's quite something. I think it's eros. Maybe unsatisfied eros, but eros. Villa Palazzetto in Padova. Now, I'm sure this was an old building, an existing building, and he just added these things at the front, and maybe I'm not sure, he modified these rather strange things on the top, on the roof. But look at the stair, and look at what's going on here. It's a framing, but it's a framing with disruptions of its being, and it's all concrete, but it's there is, look, it's dangerous, no handrail here. Good architects usually they either are exquisite in designing beautiful handrails, or they hate handrails altogether, or like Le Corbusier places, at least in one case, the handrail where the wall is and not on this side, which is absurd. That's what he did, Le Corbusier, at that building for the textile workers in Ahmedabad. And he himself actually risked his life on that stair. There is a picture of Le Corbusier working on such a stair without a handrail where it is supposed to be, with his back against the wall, and behind him is Doshi, the much younger Doshi, who was ready in any unfortunate case to save the master's life. Architects are strange. Not just architects, of course, but look here. Didn't we talk about the two-ness, about the two? Well, here again, Romeo and Juliet, again, intersecting, making love to each other, right here in the water. And, to do it in the water, the experts say it's even better. He enjoyed himself. What else can we say? Yeah, of course, there was someone who afforded these exotisms from Carlo Scarpa. I think, if I remember correctly, his son worked on this building. This is also interesting, and I think was built by his son, if my memory is correct. It is a little bit different but here we also see the play with two-ness. I don't want to, exaggerate the importance of this two-ness, but I think it is. Even here, we have a left element and the right, and between them there is a rift. And yeah. But he didn't finalize this work, and it's possible he didn't even work a lot on this. It was his son. Monuments. He did monuments too. Tomba Vettore Rizzo, Venezia, 1940. 1940. I hate that there is that thing in the middle of the picture, but it was very hard to arrive, to find the pictures with these works. And I found this website, casapaladio.org. It ruined the picture for the authorship. What can we do? For them, it was more important the authorship than the integrity of the picture. Sad. Each picture is like this, ruined because of the ego of the whatever photographer or whoever did it. How different we are from the builders of the Hindu temples or the builders of the beautiful Gothic cathedrals, who didn't need to assert their authorship at all, and they built cathedrals. And here is just a photographer, so full of himself, cutting the picture in two to ruin it essentially in order to assert himself. It's disgraceful. Disgraceful again. I can't enjoy now Carlo Scarpa because of this fool who had to place the whatever, and not once. He could have done it discreetly. No, it's an enfilade of signatures. They're all pictures like this, all ruined, all of them. But behind this, what do we see? We see that, unsettled and unsettling cube, eroded in the center geometrically. So this is a little monument. It's a cube, but it's not a very stable cube. It has the instability that existed within Carlo Scarpa, and he consciously or unconsciously promoted. Basamento della scultura alla partigiana di Leoncillo, Venezia, 1955. He just did the pedestal. The sculpture does not belong to him. I love both the sculpture and the pedestal. And it's not easy to do a pedestal. This Constantin Brâncuș knew very well, because the pedestal has to be a little bit different from what it springs from. In other words, to be a little more elevated or sophisticated, or a little bit more artistic than the slab or the ground, but not to compete with the artwork. So it has to have if I am to express myself oxymoronically, a reticent exaltation. This is the role of a pedestal, to be moderately exalted or very discreetly exalted, to have a reticent exaltation. The exaltation is supposed to belong to the sculpture, which, the less trained in avant-garde art or modern art would say this is not art. So you might say the pedestal is more elaborated and more art or artsy than the artwork itself. But I'm not so sure. I actually love the artwork, and I also love what the architect did. Carlo Scarpa, look here. This is, again, it's exquisite architectural art, because this man understood that he cannot place, again, that's why Kenneth Frampton talked about the adoration of the joint. This piece, the artwork, doesn't just, sit on the pedestal. There is this transitional element, the third entity that I mentioned before. And the third element itself has its special place, this little alcove, this channel. So it's beautiful. So let's imagine that pedestal grows, and then it arrives at a point where the third element, which is supposed to negotiate between it and the artwork, is supposed to be inserted. So what does Scarpa does? Creates this depression into the top of the pedestal to accommodate this, as I call it, the third element. So this is a continuous negotiation between various parts that are supposed to come together without losing their identity. This is great art. Out of nothing, you say, just a pedestal, for God's sake, for a sculpture, which most people would call is not a sculpture. But I can look at it and smile and be happy and enjoy it and write about it a few pages at least. This is the art of architecture. It is. And again, I think it's erotical and spiritual at the same time. It's both. Very nice. Very, very nice. Carlo Scarpa is sending towards us a clin d'oeil. That's what he does with such things. And you see the artwork, again, there is a spacing between the pedestal. In essence, this massive pedestal, in structural terms, was not needed to support. I mean, the pedestal is much more monumental than the sculpture itself. The supporting part of this piece, if I am to call it a piece, is bigger than the supported. So, but the connection between the two is done through this third element, which is it's in a way whimsical. It's a little bit mysterious. You have to notice it to enjoy it. It's like a good, and I'm far from being an expert in cookies, but it is said that the French know something about they know how to price the smallest cake. You know, in Paris, costs a fortune. But it's a little bit something like this. I remember Émile Cioran saying that he only learned how to eat in France. It's possible. I lived for a short while in France. I never learned how to eat, and I never will. But apparently, Émile Cioran, who lived for much longer, he did. Well, also helped by his girlfriend, who went to work while Émile Cioran was reflecting on the French food and Bach and God. And he doesn't even mention her name in any of his writings, which I thought is very, very unfair. Very unfair. She was going to work to bring food, so the immigrant Émile Cioran would enjoy. And he doesn't even say thank you on one page to Simone, his girlfriend. When I arrived in Cimetière Montparnasse at his grave, and I saw that there are two people buried there, I couldn't believe my eyes. I thought Émile Cioran was all his life alone. Was not true. He had a girlfriend for 50 years, 50 years. And Simone is there with him, with Émile, in Domus Eterna, talking about tombs. Tomba, Rinaldo Lazzari, where 1960. A tomb it is, but don't we see again the two-ness, and the oneness here? This is actually, it's Rinaldo Lazzari. I imagine a couple, maybe, or it refers to the duality within a person. That is possible too, because the masculine animus and anima exist in in all of us. So there is a two-ness within each one of us as well. So it's a simple gravestone, but looking more carefully to it, maybe it's not so. Look here again. Why did he do it in this way? It's again, this is art. It's art. And so is here. This is truly beautiful. This depression here, is with this. He was obsessed by the two circles that come from the Orient, the two circles intersecting. You can see them at the Brion Cemetery as well. We see them on this tombstone, transfigured, but still recognizable, because it's kind of a trademark. Again, we see, just like at Salk Institute in La Jolla, California, by Louis Kahn, why did he divide that space between the two rows of buildings with a channel, just like he does here on this gravestone, you know, Scarpa. So, you know, by the way of Luis Kahn and Carlo Scarpa, and they were friends. And I hope I have here a picture with both of them. Luis Kahn said that the adoration of the joint is actually the adoration of nature. Yes. And bringing Frank Lloyd Wright into the discussion, by extension, is the adoration of God. Because when Frank Lloyd Wright was asked in an interview, do you believe in God? And he said, I do, but I spell it nature. So the adoration of nature could be translated into the adoration of God. Another tomba, Udine, 1960. This is a drawing, but it's hard to read. Anyway, here it is. This piece, I don't know if he did the other one as well. Probably not, only this one. But I like this. I don't think it was his work, maybe. But maybe he agreed to leave it like this, you know, so-called ugly imperfection of, you know, deterioration of the work. Now I think it adds to the beauty of the work that Scarpa did. And again, here we see two-ness, and again we see the rift between two parts, and so on. Yes, alas, two souls are dwelling in my heart, as Faust said or as Goethe said through Faust. Tomba Veriti, Udine, again, this is a more ambitious work in a way, because it's more than just a tombstone. I probably could attempt to write a, you know, rather satisfactory PhD paper on Carlo Scarpa, at least, you know, based on the quantity of research I did. Now, I'm joking, of course, but I enjoyed it. He's an architect to discover, and there is always something that you don't know. You know, it's always something a little bit off, a little bit strange, and I really hope I have that picture with Luis Kahn and Carlo Scarpa. Now, if this doesn't fill your heart with joy, I don't know what, if you are a student of architecture. You know, here you have two great architects together. You know, you can tell that there is friendship between them and understanding. You know, after all, Luis Kahn wrote the, you know, the foreword or the introduction to a book on the work of Carlo Scarpa. And of course, they recognized each other's genius, you know, and when you have, you know, two for the price of one, is even better. I hope I have that picture. But until we arrive there, look at the awkwardness of this gate. But the gate itself, as a program in architecture, is a summum of challenges. No, because a gate. What is a gate? You know, it's a transition, it's a threshold, it's a separation, and also unifying, and also unifying at the same time. And he was attracted by this theme, by the two-ness of a threshold, of a gate, both belonging to the inside and the outside. You know, Bogdan, who I hope is still here, said that he is buried, you know, yes, I know, vertically, but you know, on the wall of the Brion Cemetery, but outside of the Brion Cemetery. Again, it's about being on being at the frontier between the inside and the outside, and this difficult space of transition, I think, is very very fruitful for architecture, and maybe not only for architecture. Tomba Capovilla, Venezia. Yeah, this one is a little, I don't know, maybe he was asked to incorporate, you know, a figurative bas relief here. I don't know. But here again, we see the triumph of the third element. Here very well could have been a bird by Brancusi. In the middle, in the empty space between two entities, two, you know, solid parts. Maybe something wrong with me, but I see errors here too. And it's very interesting how this thing emerges in between the two, and then it has a platform or a base or a, I don't know how to call it, Romanian otavă, on which, what is that? Is like giving like, yes, otavă, God, how could I say this in English? For with offerings for the gods, for the sky, for God. It's a you know, some kind of a homage in a way to the above. Very nice. Basamento della scultura. This one is right across the, I don't know how to call it. It's where the Venice Biennial is, and many people pass by without knowing that there you have also a very good sculptural work by Augusto Murer, but also the base is made by Carlo Scarpa, and it's here. I mean, it's splendid, it's beautiful. I mean, Venice is beautiful. The sunset in Venice is beautiful. Everything is beautiful. This sculpture is beautiful. The canal is beautiful. And these cubes are done by Carlo Scarpa. When did he do them? 1968. Basamento della scultura La Partigiana, di Augusto Murer, 1968. To me, there's a little, I mean, a question, it's a question of taste, but I wish these were not so white and so clean. I wish they were more darkened by water, but maybe when the level of the sea, of the water grows, I don't know, actually, they almost exasperate me with their cleanness and newness. Maybe, I don't know, maybe something wrong there. But here, where also you have, you know, the nature activate the stone, interact with the stone, it's nice. And it's, you know, and the sculpture is magnificent. You know, it's, this is art. This is art. That is his feeling, his emotion, his spirit. His spirit, this is what it is. A word we do not use most of the time, and it's sad. Yes, it's about paying homage. It's about death. It's about commemoration. But we are all to be commemorated one day. We are born in order to die. And so in such acts of paying homage, we connect with those who preceded us and with those who will come after us. Again, the threshold, the existential threshold and the existential hourglass, you know, where the past becomes present and becomes future, and the future becomes past, and death nourishes life, and life nourishes death. I love the sculpture, it's true. Anyway, let's not become too emotional. Let's allow the geometry of Carlo Scarpa, because he is using here geometry. Yes, it is playing with cubes, but they are cubes, all right. And then look at this glorious black and white picture of the same thing. It's, if I am to speculate philosophically, to attempt to speculate philosophically, looking at this picture, what do I see? Well, I see this rather solid, stubborn cubes that slowly disintegrate, they slowly disperse themselves towards what matters actually, you know, the reminder that the sculpture does. And this is actually, they lead to, in a way, they are horizontal pedestals. They lead towards the artwork. The artwork doesn't sit on top of them like usually a sculpture sits on a pedestal, but they lead. It's the transition between the you know, the earth, in a way, the telluric, towards the, if I can call it so, but it's a little bit maybe rhetorical, the celestiousness, if there is such a word, of the sculpture. So this is a transition from the walking alley here, and the Venice Biennial campus is right across the space from here, and this, you know, reminder of the fragility of life and the unfairness of war, because it's probably commemorating something having to do with this. Now we arrive at his masterpiece, perhaps his best known work, Tomba Brion in San Vito d'Altivole, 1974-1978. When he died in 1978 under curious circumstances, falling from a building in Japan, in his beloved Japan, or on a stair in Japan, or I couldn't find very precise information. There are various stories about it. It's for a family. It's a private cemetery. It's not what we are accustomed to, but it's an aristocratic work. You know, it's I mean, who could afford, you know, a private cemetery? Well, that's what it is. And it's a reflection, a meditation again on life and death. And life and death are the two cups of the hourglass, or clepsydra, of existence. And that's why when we talk about life, I think we should also reflect on its other side, so to speak. That's why Cesare Zavattini, an important film, well, screenplay writer, said that if he had the power, he would have reminded everyone in the world that one day they would die. And he didn't have this thought because of morbidity. The same way, Ingmar Bergman said that not one single day in his life he spent without thinking about death. And he was not morbid. He was highly creative. Maybe that knowledge made him even intensified his creativity. This is the plan. I mean, there were books written about this formidable work. It's really one of the most complex, accomplished, enigmatic, poetical architectural works ever made. And maybe it's not an accident that it is actually a domus eterna. It's a cemetery. Concrete. Of course, he didn't think about the fact that concrete pollutes, but what am I to say here that is not loss of words or of your time? I don't know. I don't know. Again, it is concrete, it is water, there is dirt, if we are to call it dirt, the aging of the concrete under the, you know, the pressure of the elements. When I wrote about this building, I noticed this, but this is not just about this building, the erosions. I call actually the works of Carlo Scarpa as being positive erosions. I know it's oxymoronic what I said, because an erosion usually you would consider in negative terms. It's a subtraction, but these are positive subtractions. They are positive erosions, if that makes sense. And then, I mean, you know, I mean, look, here is an erosion, another positive erosion. You know, why did he do it? The functionalist would not understand. But the functionalist doesn't understand what architecture is. That's why I'm totally against the simplistic functionalism that we practice stubbornly. Not that functionalism could not have some positive values itself. It could. And there are some good so-called functionalist buildings. But I still think that the best functionalist buildings are those that somewhere, somehow, you know, they turn at least temporarily or slightly their back on functionalism. Like this gate, another gate. You know, who would do such a gate? You know, it's almost like a wall. It's a wall which moves, but it's, I don't know if I'm inspired enough now and knowledgeable enough to express. I can tell you when I visited it the first time, I think only 2 times I visited it. But the first time was with 2 young, I don't know if they were architects or students in architecture from Australia. And there were just the 3 of us in this cemetery. And I talked a little bit with them. They came from Australia to visit this cemetery, specifically for this cemetery. You see the power of art and true architecture. It attracts people from very far away who are not tiring to take the plane for many hours to come to see the work. And I think if we have any ambition in us, in the good sense of the word, we should struggle to do work so good that 2 or 3 or 5 or 1 Australians would love to take the plane just to see the work. Just as Stephen Hall wrote to me that he would love to come to Târgu Jiu to see the endless column by Brâncuș. Him not being a student in architecture or a young Australian architect, but a 74 years old man. And still he wanted to learn and to see a significant work. And Ștefan Augustin Odoinaș, the Romanian poet, was correct when he said only what is a wonder deserves to be. And if we keep infesting the world with works which are not worthy of being, we are destroying not only the earth, we are also destroying ourselves and destroying life. So attempt to do significant works. Just when you make a project that, especially if it is to be built, do it in such a way that one day, hopefully, let's say 2 young Australians who take the plane to come to see it. Not easy, I recognize, it's not easy, but this is the challenge and the beauty of creating anything. Look at this, the ziggurats which play hide and seek, as I said, with each other. It's, what are these things here? They are, well, they have a, you know, they are like the peacock's tail, you know, they are useless. Certainly useless in terms of an explicit down to earth, so to speak, function, but they have an allegorical, a metaphorical, a symbolic meaning. You know, they show progressions and regressions. They show the dynamics of life. You know, everything that is alive is emerging, is evolving, is subtracting, is adding and subtracting at the same time. You have continuously 2 forces at play and continuously the dialectics between them. Concrete, the truth is, never mind, it pollutes, but it can be very beautiful when, especially when it is stained. You know, it's lovely. It's lovely. Don't we see here the two circles that I kept mentioning? And yes, he was himself obsessed with saw them, or we saw them in his drawings. And here we see the positive erosions. Of course, this work is in good measure sculpture, but between architecture and sculpture, there is a love story. Architecture, unfortunately, kind of forget its lover, its former lover, that is sculpture. Too bad. Too bad for the many talented sculptors who are not invited to contribute to the buildings, our buildings. And then there is the water, of course, which is a luxury. But when you have the stone, well, even in its artificial form, the concrete, and you have water, then something magical happens. Because I talked about Lao Tzu, no, who praised water for the incredible strength of water. The building is supposed to be symbolically stone. It is stone, that it is concrete or whatever, but it's stone. And the water, the fragile water, problematizes that stone. So it's the dialogue. In a way, a building, any building, even the so-called our demagogical green buildings, are in their essence red, not green, even if their color is gray or green. They are red in their essence, conceptual or whatever. And they are fire, in other words, because it's the fire of the imagination of the creator, it's the fire that creates metal, it's the fire of the metal inside the concrete, it's the fire that is used to create even, to make even glass. It's without fire, we could not have built any building. Any building in its essence is red, including so-called simplistically and misleadingly and demagogically called green architecture. That is red too. And then we have the green. In fact, the greenness belongs to the water. So we have fire and water. The building is fire and the water is water. So we have fire and water. Well, we have alchemy. That's what we have. And the Chinese, who know something about this, they employ water all the time around the well, more or less inspired buildings in the present. They continuously bring water in very close proximity to their buildings, and they do well. Of course, they have the money to do it, but why do they have the money? Because they deserve it. They work hard, very, very hard, and what would the world economy do without them? Look at this strange thing here. There's what is this here? You know, it's cryptical. You know, it's a logo of some sort, or probably the word logo is too banal, too prosaic. I don't know what it is, but you know, there is a fourness here, and there is a two-ness here, and there is some kind of a cross, but it's not really a cross with curved parts. I don't know what it is, but he planted it there in the concrete for some reason. Now here there are references to Oriental architecture, and we know that Carlo Scarpa was very, not only very knowledgeable about Oriental architecture, but he was also very inspired by it, the spirit of Oriental architecture. It's a continuous dialogue and conflict between stability and instability, between solidity and fragility. And that's what life is for all of us. It's a building which is both audacious and modest. And this is very, very difficult to do. It's very easy to be, you know, inflated, to have a, you know, bombastic chest and make a bombastic building, like some building by Sir Norman Foster. Okay, so what? You are only celebrating the masculine principle, that's it. But there is also femininity. And, you know, there is fire and there is water. And if you have just one, it's not enough. Look at this diagonal here. You know, again, you remember earlier we saw a picture of that, I don't know what it was, a chimney of some sort, or also with a cut, that cut is art. You know, that cut is worth all the money. You know, it's just this thing, you know, forget the whole thing. Is this cut here? Why did he make it? Did he have to make it? No, he didn't have to, but it's great art, in my opinion. And look how the work of Scarpa welcomes the wild nature. You know, the nature wants to make love to the architecture of Carlo Scarpa. That's what we see here, an embrace between the two. They love each other, you know. And paradoxically, anyway, let's not. I'm not going to become too explicit here, but this conjunction between nature and the work of man, and of course, Carlo Scarpa would not have used the foolish words of Winnie Mas, who is otherwise a good architect, the main designer at MVRDV, who said, used the words about one of the projects, to outsmart nature. I mean, this is ridiculous. I think I might even said it once this very evening, to outsmart nature. Well, Carlo Scarpa doesn't want to outsmart nature, and he knows how you cannot outsmart nature. Even if you try hard, you can't. And, you know, coming via Frank Lloyd Wright, that nature is God, saying that you outsmart nature coincides with saying outsmarting God. This is ridiculous, you know. I mean, really ridiculous. And look at these two tombs, you know, again, two nests, a couple. They are, you know, oriented towards each other a little bit. They are distinct. Also, the base, you know, is suggesting instability because it's a little bit curved here. So you would say this could actually fall, you know, if pushed a little bit. And you know, it's beautiful. It's really beautiful because you have probably that's what we look at here, the two tombs, you know, longing for each other, almost arriving at each other, but not quite. And I'm speechless. And here we see the erosion of man. I mean, the positive erosion is not the erosion provoked by nature, it's an erosion consciously provoked by the artist, the architect, the author. He erodes his own structure because he's aware, he's anticipating the work of time and the work of nature. Now, Joseph Brodsky, the youngest, I don't know if he's still, probably still the youngest poet who received the Nobel Prize in Poetry, a Russian, Joseph Brodsky, although he was born in Russia and lived in the United States, he chose to be buried in Venice. And you know, I just had this maybe inadequate and inadequate thought of that. If I die, and of course I will die, I would love to be buried here in this cemetery, which of course will not happen. Even the author of the cemetery was not allowed to enter it, so he was kept at the edge, on the fringe. It is a beautiful architectural work. What else can we say? You know, it transcends time, space, ideologies, religious denominations. It's really a meditation on everything in a way, you know. It's when you see such a work, you know, you don't ask the stupid questions, you know, how am I to bring the piano in, or the refrigerator in, or, you know, where is the toilet, or the parking, or such ridiculous things, you know. There is more to life than these things, really. Look here again, the pairs continuously, you know, in love with each other. They are everywhere, you know, they're everywhere. Here too, and also those two big circles that we saw from this is like a chapel. Look here, look here. Le Corbusier and Yanis Xenakis, and at their intersection springs Ronchon, as we saw in a diagram that I discovered on the web when we paid homage to Yanis Xenakis. And this year is his centennial. Stele commemorativa del secondo anniversario della strage di Piazza della Loggia Brescia, 1977. This, I think, I hate this. I really hate these pictures cut in half by this photographer or this organization. I don't know. He only did this. I think this thing is not perhaps worthy of. But this is a recent photograph because you see, or maybe that that masking has nothing to do with the pandemic, but I think it does. It does because everybody wears them. Yeah, he only did this thing here. I don't know what it is exactly. He obviously liked to work for such little programs, you know, like pedestals or whatever. But what moves me in this picture, and he really does, these people who are probably not artists, well, maybe one person is, but they are not. And, you know, risking to get a virus, you know, here they need to clean up this thing, you know, to contribute to the endurance of a work done by the compatriot Carlo Scarpa. And again, let's read it's a stela. It's a stela commemorative del secondo anniversario della strage di Piazza. I don't know. Yes, it's some kind of a commemorative thing that he built. And but so again, these people came here just to clean it up, restore it after they gathered the funds and so on. So what does this show? It shows that the good work, in a way, is never alone, or it shouldn't be alone. Other people, you know, contribute, even though we don't know their names, they contribute to the lasting of the work, and this is beautiful. And these are, I don't know, the drawings that do not really seem to be made by Carlo Scarpa, but the way, imagine, he designed this thing in this way, and yeah, you would say it's a small work, but small works are important too. And and look here, this is Scarpa again. It's unbelievable, actually. I mean, these small things, you know, that it's very, very possible you pass by them. Look, the two ziggurats, the two parts are even in this smallest detail here. And let's see if I have another picture. Yeah, it's just the handrail that separates this stela from the street or square, whatever it is. So he did this thing, but this thing itself, it's magical because it's architectural. You know, it's made as fragments, you know, that add up to the length required. Also, the vertical element is, again, you can make architecture, and you should, for the smallest thing, you know, the smallest thing, you know, just a handrail. I have to look at this again, and unfortunately, I cannot see very well, especially with my glasses, which I buy in a flea market with 5 lei or 5 ron. And of course, they are not made for my eye. I ruin my eyes in this way, but on the other hand, I have the chance to see the world through other people's eyes, which is a great chance. Look at these small pieces; they really intrigue me. You know, this thing. You know, yeah, you could say become obsessional. It's probably true. So let's go to another tomb. Gali Genova, realizzazione postuma. 1981. We know he died in 1978. And again, we see the rift and we see the two parts. But it's an interesting work, vigorous, and because of its textures, tectonically is vigorous. Although it shouldn't be too vigorous because it is a tomb after all, but it's not too vigorous. It's just fine. Museums, Biennale di Venezia, Padiglione del Libro, the pavilion of books, Venice, 1950, and still this one is still an amazing structure. I don't know if it still exists because I was a few times there and I never saw it. It's there must be something wrong with me. I saw the one built by Alvaralto, but I didn't see this one. This is more kind of in tone with the Venice Biennial because it's it's more outgoing and in a way modernistic, and it's not a nostalgic structure. The Venice Biennial is not about nostalgia, although Rem Koolhaas tried to bring nostalgia in when he was exploring foundations. But Rem Koolhaas is a dubious figure, in my opinion. He can only be trusted so far. This is a model of this pavilion that he built for the Venice Biennial. Interesting, this one too, and I'm not sure I quite understand it, but also a little bit aggressive, which is not very common from him to see aggressive architecture. But this is a little bit, particularly the triangular elements. This drawing does not belong to him. It's a computerized drawing. I don't know if it still exists. It's possible it doesn't. Then the billetteria is where, a kiosk for selling tickets at the Venice Biennial in Giardini di Castello. Here it is. Didn't we talk about Tunis? Here they are again. This man cannot just do a monolith without attempting at least to cut it in two. He cut it into this one as well. Rather strange. I'm not even sure if I could say I like it, but it does have personality, and it's unique. It's idiosyncratic. And it's just for selling tickets, but why not make something special if you can? And he did. And again, we see the column in the case of Carlo Scarpa, the adoration of the joint here when it approaches the concrete, slab. There is a transitional element, so there is another one here also between the vertical and the horizontal. It's always a sum of tensions and negotiations. I keep coming back to this word for some reason. Galleria d'Arte Moderna, Il Cavallino in Venezia, no pictures. Risistemazione delle Galleria dell'Accademia in Venezia, 1952-1955. A great art gallery there, but no pictures. Giardino della Sculture, Venezia, the garden of sculpture. This exists in the campus of the Venice Biennial. We see here another kind of two-ness between convexity and concavity, although they are both convexities, but it depends how you look at it, but they are opposing each other. And so it's again about the dialectics and conflict and conjunction and disjunction at the same time. This is also cut in two. A student of architecture is possible, or an architect, an admirer perhaps of Carlo Scarpa. Now, was this done by him like this intentionally? It's possible because again, the two-ness, but this is also interesting, just this wall, unfinished as it is, and it didn't have to be finished. I like it. I love it. And water, again, water. And then the massive, was it necessary to be so massive? Probably not. But he did it. He has it too. But again, the horizontal slab, the slab is not sitting on this massive vertical support directly, but through the, an intermediate element. And we know this. And again is the adoration of the joint. And through that joint, nature enters lovingly and triumphantly. Because nature has good taste. That's what it is. Gypsoteca Canoviana in Treviso. Because he was very, very knowledgeable about how to do interior design. He had various commissions in this field. Look at these windows here, which would exasperate the functionalists. But I hope I had another picture. Well, the kind of here, but again, we see here the same thing. This also is some kind of a positive erosion, because, I almost said normally, most architects would have just had this wall meet the other wall at the corner. But, so the corner of the space would be centrifugal, and then he introduces a configuration that is centripetal, or vice versa. It's I don't know if I explained well. Geometrically, this is a convexity, and here geometrically this is a concavity. So he brings in the concavity, the geometrical concavity, exactly at the corner, and thus he anticipates, because the corner in many important architectures, in any architecture actually, is the most vulnerable part of the building, actually, the corner. And important architects from Mies van der Rohe and even Palladio had a lot of attention for the corner. And again, in the corner, he brings additional fragility. The corner existentially is fragile, but Carlo Scarpa amplifies the fragility by cutting the corner in this way and bringing the windows, but in a very unusual way, because of course we have many examples of the window turning around the corner, eliminating the corner, so to speak, in Frank Lloyd Wright and other architectures. But what he does here is different. Is different. He doesn't just play with a window that transgresses the corner. He creates two windows that are almost facing each other, well, at an angle, a 90 degrees angle. It's very interesting. And I wish I had other pictures. Maybe I do. You see the interior, it's so, he creates something three-dimensional in this corner, although it would have been there very easily, very easily possible to remain within the field of 2 dimensions. I don't know if my wording is the best, but I think you understand even without my words quite well. Because what we look at here from the outside, we look at here from the inside. That's what it is. And then look at this window here, because here is in a way a triple corner. I mean, I am saying stupidities now, but what I'm trying to say is that not only 2 walls meet, but they also meet at the top of the building with a slab, the terrace. So he's subversive towards the very corner of the building, at the very top. You remember probably in that formidable building by Louis Sullivan, where he emphasize that special point or zone of the building by a tree-like, ornamental configuration that dramatizes the corner. Here we don't have ornament per se, but we have this cube of light, because how else are we to name it, which is not simplistically done. I mean, look, even here in the corner of the cube of light, there are interesting things happening, studied, that is. This thing itself, this this cube of light, we could perhaps, see, if we are poetically inclined and rather exalted, as an homage to God, and as an homage to light, as an homage to cosmos, as an homage to anything that is, uplifting and, flying, yes. Very nice, Now, would rainwater penetrate the cube of light inside the building? That might be possible, but Italians can be very good builders and craftsmen. And plus, if that does happen, maybe inspired by Frank Lloyd Wright, Carlo Scarpa, if he was alive, he would have told the manager or the people who administered the building to just put a pot underneath this transparent cube of light. Museo Correr, Venezia. This is another masterwork, 1952, 1953, and then 1957, 1969. But we don't have now. It was my mistake. I was too exalted. I was referring to this one, the Museo Civico di Castelvecchio in Verona. Difficult work to interpret unless you visited it, and I didn't visit it. In Castelvecchio, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. It does seem so, but let's see in what way. He was dealing with an existing building, and he was inserting. He was very good at this, where he was handling situations where already there was a past, where already there is a present, or that there was something there. Just like in the case of the ballad of Master Manole, who started to build his church not in an free land, but if you remember the ballad, he said to his workers, the place to start building the church was there where a dog was barking and there was a ruin. This is not accidental, and it's not without importance. The anonymous author of the ballad of Master Manole had the intuition that a building, in order to legitimate its coming into being, needs some kind of rooting, some kind of past, the proximity in other words, to situate itself on the spiral, on some kind of a spiral connected with what preceded it and with what might come. And what is the barking of the dog? What does it mean? Because that's what in the ballad of Master Manole it is said. It is written that only when Manole heard the dog barking and he saw a ruin in his search for a place where to build his church, only then he said to his workers, let's stop. We build the church here. This is the place. But what does the dog mean? The dog is known in mythology as being the one who accompanies man or the human being in the beyond, in death, in Hades, in death. So a barking dog could mean, that the dog, it's known. I even read recently that a dog somewhere, I forgot where, lived near the grave of his so-called master, well, his friend, his human friend for many days without eating anything, just being there, because dogs are very, very loyal. So a barking dog could evoke, you know, the presence of death, but also the presence of a past life, just like the ruin. So coming back to Carlo Scarpa, I think Carlo Scarpa also metaphorically or factually would have loved to build and did build there where a dog barked and where there was a ruin. And here there was a ruin. We see a ruin part here. We see fragments of ruin here. This was an old building, and he just inserted new interventions, which are, you know, I mean, I don't know if I do justice to this building, improvising now, more or less inspired, but you know, it's really about asserting one's time, but also continuing, connecting with what preceded him. Sorry about that blank slide. I don't know what happened. So again, the building existed. The part that he worked on was here, and also the inside. Now you see this part here is you almost don't notice it. You look at this courtyard and the garden and so on, and you almost don't notice that there is an intervention here that belongs to our time, but it's not aggressively belonging to our time. It's again some kind of a positive erosion. It's an intervention, but is not in a disruptive way divorced from the existing. It's rather, you know, well, it's both discreetly and audaciously present, and he has such interventions all the time in his architecture. You know, some more noticeable than others. Like here, you know, this is the work of Carlo Scarpa, but you know, yes, it is different from the rest of the building, but not in a, you know, alarming way. Although it is distinctly him. He did work with squares. We know. We have seen even at the Venice Biennial. I am a little bit tired, but we'll continue. We have a few more slides to show. I do have a lot. I had about 400 images with his work. And sorry for this long presentation. Look at this. It's really, I think it's very beautiful because it's clearly a so-called contemporary or a modern intervention, but it transcends somehow, you know, fashion, time even, although we feel its modernity. And it continues to be some kind of a ruin, but I don't know how to say, a willed ruin. This is a willed ruin. You know, it's desired and provoked and designed by the architect, but not literally as a ruin. This is the difficult thing to do. Without mimicking a ruin, he's still evoking the fragmentation which the ruin means. And then there is, of course, the disobedience of diagonal, and diagonals are always very good at this. And then the interplay of light and shadow, which is, you know, distinctive. Good work, excellent work. He probably created also these easels, you know, which in itself is a you know, is a creation. Now, the professor of interior design or interior architecture, of course, was at home with such programs. Biennale di Venezia, Padiglione del Venezuela. He designed the pavilion of Venezuela. Is this one where, again, the windows are, events in themselves, as they should be if we could do so. Venezuela. Designed by Carlo Scarpa, the non-architect. Yeah. Or maybe man didn't make him an architect, but God did. And look at this. It's a creation right here, which welcomes, because I don't think, but I could be wrong. No, I don't think I'm wrong. I don't think this, this imperfect edge here was done by him intentionally. Well, who knows? But I don't think it was. Anyway, it was or it wasn't. But everything in these small things which you step on and you move on and you almost do not notice. But at a close look, it's hard not to notice. Also, what's interesting, because the door, I imagine, maybe I don't know. No, I think it was done intentionally. So you don't go straight. You go, if you walk here and you are inclined to walk here on this side, the left side of this, what I'm trying to say is the access is a little bit made a little bit difficult, because you go zigzagging, you go like this and then you turn right and enter. And this is also happening at Villa Mairea by Alvarado and in other buildings by Alvarado. It was said that the entrance is not direct, it's not straight, it's not a straight line, from A to B. And it's the same thing here, and again, the functionalist would breathe hard. The functionalist to say, wait a minute, I'm hitting a wall here, or, the door is here. Let's move these things to the right, so go straight. No, the architect who is a poet knows better. Sorry to the functionalist. I'm reminded, and I mentioned this before, Fernando Pessoa, who was in love with an employee, a colleague in the same office, and he drew, the longest way to accompany her home. The longest is the same thing here in a way. It's not the longest, but it is a little bit of a postponement. It's not a direct, straight and efficient and so on. No, it's a little postponement. He's the architect of postponements, I would say. Not the only one, but he is. Venezuela, the pavilion. Well, the artwork is not his. Anyway, the glory of art, Palazzo Abatellis, Galleria Regionale di Sicilia, Palermo. No pictures. Progetto per il Museo Picasso in Parigi, 1976. He was 70 years old, but do I have pictures now? Sorry, I couldn't find pictures for those now. Public buildings, as if the others, well, some of them were public. Fondazione Querini Stampalia in Venezia, an important work by Finn, 1961, 1963. God, I'm afraid it will be midnight when we finish this commemorative presentation. Look here again, talking about zigzagging and postponing. Well, these stairs, they're also not straight. They are going a little bit, on the side, so to speak, or, there is a twist here. And what is the role of this stair? Of course, the level of the water of the canal grows, and he welcomes the water even inside the building. I don't think these stairs are used for access into the building. I don't know, are they just to, maybe to sit here and contemplate the water, or symbolically representing some kind of a dialogue between the building, the upper part, and the exterior, and also the water of the canal. I should read more about this, but it's a good work, and there is also we are going to see the bridge, also a magnificent work. This idea, which is also Oriental, instead of building a fortress wall in front of the water, to actually, just like in Oriental philosophy, welcome the adversity of, if we are to call it so, of the incoming water, and not oppose it, but receive it in a certain way. How exactly is that certain way? Look at these incisions here. Why did he do them? Well, they are decorative, I mean ornamental, but in a superior sense. Anyway, and this is the bridge. Again and again, the conjunction of two elements through adoring the joint. Again and again, the two parts, connecting, and then, they are separated, they unite, and then they separate again, as you can see. So separation, conjunction, separation, conjunction is really, I cannot avoid the word, it's eros, it's the tango of love. And here again, two parts, and magically done. I mean, the craftsmanship is superior. It's you can write an hymn to beauty and to architecture just by contemplating this edge of the handrail. That's it. We didn't yet finish the presentation, unfortunately, for both you and me. Again and again and again, the two interlocking, meeting halfway. Water coming in, it's okay. The rift, the cut, showing the two-ness of life. The two-ness of life, again, aspiration, longing for each other, even as cuts. This is also magical here. The erosion of this. I mean, most architects would have not even given a thought to it, but look what he does here. I mean, countless books had been published just with the details of his work, but in a way, all his work is details. If it is true that in architecture there are no details, in the architecture of Carlo Scarpa, there are only details, but details which are supreme architecture in the very essence. I don't know what's going on here. The garden, yes, the garden. At the level of the eye, perhaps, this ornamental, decorative insertion in the thickness of the concrete wall, but he uses ornament all the time, in an abstracted way, but he does. And then again, he was a master of channeling water, as we remember, from one place to another. Even this is magnificent. I remember when I visited Alhambra, I fell in love with the way the Arabs were doing the garden. In fact, I like more the garden than the building, which itself is glorious. But the gardens, I kept filming them for 2 hours. It was just the art of understanding water. It's just amazing. So if you arrive at Alhambra, please pay attention to those magnificent gardeners. Here also, it's art. It's art. It's architecture. It's art. It's landscape architecture. It's even psychoanalysis. No, maybe not analysis. Psychosynthesis. And look here. Really, let's not move forward. Let's stop at this image. Although I have other images, but let's stop here. Let's stop this presentation here. let's erode it positively, the presentation. This image means more than everything I try to say and said. In fact, I will become silent now. Maybe we should not even say goodbye, not even say good night. Whoever wants to look at this, well, I will leave it here until midnight, and probably for 6 more hours, or 4 more hours, 5 more hours. Who wants to contemplate it for 5 more hours is welcome. I leave the Zoom on, and maybe even myself, I'll just stay here and stare at this, because I think of course he complicated himself. You know, any other architect or designer would have, if he or she wanted to make a little fountain, would have done it very efficiently and very simply. But you almost see the conceptual and the metaphysical and the factual zigzagging of water, you know, going through these things. Are these postponements, which I think are magical. He postpones, you know, and by postponing, he reaches eternity. That's what it is. He reaches eternity. I stop here. Thank you.